depression going down, she was also able to make better decisions. She was in a relationship she needed to get out of, and as she got these things out of her mind, she was able to make good decisions about that. So what we put into our minds may be pleasurable, but the long-range effects can be very hurtful. Then there's the whole thing about music. Believe it or not, there's certain kind of musics that can make the depression better or worse. And now initially you would say, oh, the upbeat music is what's going to help my depression. But when you look at the research, that upbeat music does not have the impact on your brain that it needs to have. Let's look at this, music and mental health. 75% of high school females and 50% of males who prefer heavy metal music had considered suicide, compared to 35% of girls and 15% of boys who prefer other music. Why it's higher for the females, I'm not sure. There may be some brain differences going on there, but the fact is a higher percentage of those who listen to heavy metal music had considered suicide as opposed to those who did not. I remember working with a young man. He only came in once because of what I told him. He came in very depressed, family couldn't figure out why, and automatically the music thing came to my mind, and I says, what's the music you listen to mostly? He says, rock music. I said, that's part of your problem. He says, you're going to put me off of rock music as my counselor? I don't want to have you as my counselor. And he walked out the room, which was sad. And I shared that with his sister, who was his guardian at that time, and shared, if you don't get your brother off of this music, the depression will continue. Don't know what happened to them, but I do believe what this research is showing, that heavy metal music, it might be helpful, but it does not, it might be pleasurable, I should say, but it does not help with depression. Oh, before I go to that, I have to mention the music that does help with depression, believe it or not, is classical music. Because classical music has a great impact on this right in front of here, and it's the frontal lobe. And research has shown that, whether you like it or not. And my clients, I used to have them listen to classical music once a week at least, and some of them, I also had them listening to hymns, because hymns are kind of constructed or composed in a similar way to classical music. And again, the effect will occur whether you like it or not. So we have to be careful with that if we're dealing with depression, and if you want to have a healthier brain as well. Now let's look at some eating patterns and temperance. In many cases of so-called mental failure, it is the overcrowding of the stomach that wearies the body and weakens the mind. Sometimes we're eating too much, and that can actually weaken the mind and have an impact on the brain. Many eat at all hours, regardless of the laws of health. Then gloom covers the mind. Now, I'm not saying that if you eat late, you'll always have depression, but I'm just saying if you have depression, then you want to look at some of these things you might want to change and not eat at all hours and kind of watch when you're eating, because you don't want the gloom to cover your mind. You want your brain to rest. Another thing that can help depression is air. If you look at this picture of this young lady, many of us don't know how to breathe properly. In fact, I'm going to show you how to breathe properly. If you were to put your hand on your stomach and breathe in, your stomach should come out as though you're inflating a balloon. And then when you breathe out, it should come in. Most of us don't breathe in this way. We breathe in the wrong way. Out and then in. You're getting proper air with that. And if you look at her posture, many of us walk with our shoulders kind of stooped, and we can't get proper air in. I remember working with a gentleman. I live in Atlanta, and he was in the military, and he had a hard time driving around 285, which kind of goes around the city. And when I taught him how to breathe properly, he would get into his car and start breathing. And then when he would get nervous, he would breathe. And it actually, after a while, his wife no longer had to drive him around just by breathing. He did some other changes as well, but breathing is so important. And if you look at these pictures of a waterfall and trees, you get the best fresh air in nature. Nature and natural environments give you what is known as negative ions. And negative ions are very good for the brain, very good for mood. So if you're dealing with depression, you want to breathe properly, and you want to try to get out to these places as often as you can, because it does have a positive impact on the mind. The effects produced by living in close, ill-ventilated rooms are these. The system becomes weak and unhealthy. The mind becomes depressed and gloomy. I tell people, even in the winter, keep your windows up a little so you can get that fresh air in, because it has an effect on your mind. I go into homes sometimes with people dealing with depression, and the windows are closed, and I say, open the windows so you can get fresh air in to help your mind function better. Another thing that's important for depression is proper rest. Proper periods of sleep and rest are essential to the health of the body and the mind. Our society is a sleep-deprived society. If you remember watching Little House on the Prairie, when the sun set, it was time for bed. When the sun rose, it was a time to wake up. Now we have all these lights that they didn't have during that time, and we could stay up at all hours of the night, but that's having a detrimental effect on us. We must get proper rest, not even if you're just depressed, but in general, because it has an impact on you. Sleep and depression is reciprocal. Studies are showing that if you don't get enough sleep, you're more likely to be depressed. If you're depressed, you're more likely not to sleep well. So you have to break that cycle somehow. And it's important for melatonin production. Remember I talked about that earlier? That's a hormone. It helps you sleep, and in the daytime it turns into serotonin. And it's important to keep your circadian rhythm going. All of us have a body clock that tells us when we should be sleeping, when we should get up, when we should be doing various things. And if that body clock is disrupted, we can have problems with depression. I worked with a highway patrol officer. A woman came in to me, and she had not been able to sleep well for 3 years. Her doctor referred her. And immediately when she came in, I says, "Did you ever work shift work?" She said, "How did you know?" I said, "I just had a feeling that your circadian rhythm is disrupted." She says, "I worked it for 18 years. I said, "We're going to get that circadian rhythm working again, and you're going to be sleeping." I got her going out into the sun more regularly. I had her starting to eat at a regular time, go to sleep at a regular time. She also bought what's known as a light box because it was during the winter and she couldn't get as much sunshine. She bought the light box and used that. After seeing me 2 times, she called and left an office to the front desk to say, "Tell Dr. Parks I am sleeping well. I don't need to come in anymore." Her circadian rhythm is off. Eating regularly and sleeping regularly is very important. Follow your body clock, because if you don't, there can be results from it. Not only depression, but they're finding that there are other things. In fact, my husband shared with me, he's a lifestyle educator, that shift work is now considered a carcinogenic agent, meaning it could cause cancer if you're working 3rd shift. So we got to be real careful with what we're doing and how we're resting. Circadian rhythm and bipolar disorder. Everybody is bipolar now. That's the diagnosis of the age. But there are some of them, people who truly are having problems in this area. And this study done just this year, a balanced circadian rhythm, meaning a balanced body clock, maintained through practical lifestyle habits such as regular sleep patterns and consistent daily routines helps patients to, avert new manic or depressive episodes longer than therapy focused on regulating their mood symptoms and medication. So what this study found was just getting people on a regular routine, going to bed around the same time, eating around the same time, having regular daily routines helped them to have less manic episodes or depressive episodes than if they were going into therapy to help them regulate their mood and medication. That's pretty serious. So there's lifestyle things can also help with bipolar disorder. So we need to get yourself on a regular schedule. If you're not, start working on that. What's the best time to get to sleep? Sleep is worth far more before than after midnight. 2 hours of good sleep before 12 o'clock is worth more than 4 hours after 12 o'clock. Did you get that? 2 hours of good sleep before 12 o'clock is worth more than 4 hours after 12 o'clock. So if you sleep from 10 to 12, 2 hours before, that's worth more than if you sleep from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. Isn't that powerful? So you must get those hours of sleep before, and the reason for that, if you just look at it physiologically, there are certain hormones in the brain, if you were to chart it, that's being released during that time. And if you're not getting the proper sleep, you're not getting the full effect of those hormones. So you need to get in bed as early as possible, no later than 10 o'clock, especially if you're dealing with depression. Finally, we're going to talk about another piece. All of these has to do with what we can do as human beings, but there's a key component to dealing with depression. And sometimes this is difficult for people who don't consider themselves to be Christians. You will get help by doing the other 7, but your help will be even more powerful if you include this piece. Trusting in divine power, and the divine power I'm referring to is God. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, this wise man tells us, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall do what? Direct thy paths." We have to trust, because all of these remedies we talked about earlier, the water and all of that, they don't do the healing. The actual person who's doing the healing is God. whether we believe in him or not. He is the true healer. And so this piece is so important for us to recognize. Religion